right, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in. This is Faris Alami, and this is the Startup Grind Detroit. Welcome. Today, I'm really excited about having this discussion because I've been working with Margaret for years, and I really never had the chance to dig and understand what she's done and where she wants to go. And I'm really honored to have you here with us, Margaret. Thanks so much for making time.
And thank you so much for inviting me, Ferris. I really look forward to having this conversation with
Yeah, so maybe for some for our audiences that don't know you, maybe you could tell us who's Margaret and what do you do? I mean, at least in a in a high level,
you.
some details.
Okay, well, I am currently serving as Executive Director, CEO of Pro Literacy Detroit. And I've been in that position since March 2001. And I'm also, as you mentioned, well, as we talked about, involved in the Rotary Club in Metro Detroit. And that's how we met through a project. But basically, Pro Literacy Detroit, I first learned about it, in fact, through my aunt. She was a volunteer. I wasn't aware of Pro Literacy, and at the time it was known as Literacy Volunteers of America. I didn't know, and I remember a number of times when we'd be someplace or we'd be on the phone and she'd say, I have to meet my student. And they were meeting at the Duffield Library in Detroit. And she explained that he was an adult. She had been trained to be a tutor. She loved to read and wanted to share that passion with someone who couldn't read. And so that was my first being aware of literacy volunteers. And I was also so impressed with her passion for being a tutor and making sure her student was successful. So later in life, my background is in business administration. And in fact, I'm a Wayne State University Business School. Um, Later, I looked at working in the nonprofit arena. I started out Ford Motor Company, but I was drawn to the missions that I saw in nonprofits. And so I worked in community development in terms of construction and housing rehabilitation, affordable housing. And I was recruited to look at leading this agency. And at the time, I didn't realize how dire the situation is. But if you read anything about education, you know today that Michigan ranks near the bottom in terms of academic achievement and literacy. But at the time when I came on board in 2001, in Metro Detroit, the illiteracy, which means that you have difficulty understanding reading in order to do day-to-day activities, like driving, following directions, following a recipe, so many things, using an ATM machine. And I found out that 47% of adults 16 and over were functionally illiterate. And I was just absolutely amazed. And as I researched it further, I found that there were factors that continued in our system that was allowing us to continue. And so what pro-literacy does is train volunteers, people like us, who have a passion for reading. We train them to be tutors, and they receive a certificate. And the training can be up to 16 hours. And they learn how to effectively meet the need of the student and give them the individualized, goal-centered tutorial services that they need. And our students, some who come with a high school diploma, but when tested, read below the sixth grade. And that is a barrier to their moving forward in any career because you don't meet the qualifications for even a basic job, entry level job. So that's what we do. We match a student with a tutor, and they meet 2 hours once a week in a public place. And the student really lets us know what they need help with. We test them so we can establish a baseline level. And then we talk about their interests and passions, and we build a curriculum for that student. And they stay as long as they need help until they achieve what they need to achieve. And it can be so basic as I need a driver's license, or I have difficulty using a computer and I can't apply for the jobs that are online. And there's so many things that we take for granted. Or I'm teaching a religious group, and I'd like to read scripture, and I can't read. I can't order from the menu. And so it's just an endless list of things. But when you think about it, and you think about the growth in the region, in order to grow, you have to have an educated populace. And when you're in a situation where you have so many, roughly 363 or so thousand people who just don't measure in terms of being able to read at a level where they can enter into a job. So that's basically, pretty much, I'm a lifelong Detroiter. In fact, our family got here near the turn of the 20th century. And I've lived in other places, but I've lived here the longest. I went to high school here, Northern High School. And as I mentioned, I did graduate from Wayne State University and Central Michigan University. And my family is here, my daughters, have one granddaughter. And I guess I lived through the boom times of Detroit growing up. And it was it was a place where people wanted to be. Motown was here, the cars were here, and everyone had a job, and it was just really a place that thrived. And then to go through the period, many of us remember, that ended in bankruptcy. And now to see it grow with the diversity of the population and the things that has enriched our community with, and the growth of entrepreneurship and other activities that make us now the place to be again.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that insight. And I mean, there's just so much to unfold here because if I remember correctly, you left maybe like I'm gonna say a study job to start to be part of this founding member of Pro Literacy Detroit, and I'm sure there are lots of things that went through your mind when you did that. Some of them may be good, some will be bad. I'm not sure, but I'd love to hear some of your thoughts because it feel like you were moving in a directions where you've got your bachelor, you got your master's, your career pathway seems to be clear, and then you take a shift and you go somewhere.
No, I think about that now sometimes because I wanted to, although my passion was always in arts, I played piano, I played since 7, and I wanted to be a part of Ford Motor Company because I would be a third generation person working there. And it was a very fair place to work. And because of it, my family, my uncle, prospered. And so I went to business school, which was totally alien to me. And so I wanted that discipline really too. And so I was, when I was at Wayne State University, I would be the only woman in the class. I changed
Wow.
my major to Paris. So my
Wow.
parents had paid for 3 years for me to attend Hampton. It was known as Hampton Institute in Hampton, Virginia for 3 years. And so when I switched to business, I didn't want to, I knew I could work because at that time tuition was, I won't even say now, but it was something I could afford to pay. And I lived at home and I went to school in the evening. And I would be the only woman in the class. There was only had one female instructor in the business school. And there was only two other women in the class, the entire class. And so I really, and they were all white male. And so I would, and I remember walking in after being in Hampton, which is a historically Black college, and walking in the Wayne State University that first day. And I was like, okay. And not because I felt uncomfortable or inadequate, it was just such a shift. And they were like middle management types, and I was much younger. And what I had was it was an enriching experience. And the thing that would happen would be that we had to work in groups. And so every class and every project, the major project, working together as a group on a project and presenting it. And they would always vote for me to do the presentation. And I was shy and, inside, they didn't know this, but inside I was like, oh my God. And I would do the presentations. So by the time I, got to that last year, the auto companies would come to recruit. And because of my work schedule, because I would work from 8 to 4:30, I was at Social Security Administration. And so I couldn't participate in that part of it. But I was asked to come to Ford Motor Company for an interview, and I did, and I got a job, and they had a management training program, which was very rigorous, and required us to get a master's degree as we worked in the program. And so I did that. I went to work at the time, North American Automotive Operations and Production Control. And it was exciting, making sure that the parts were there at 22 assembly plants, and I worked light truck so that the line never shut down, because it ran 24/7 for 22 plants in the US and Canada. And so I was assigned inventory that had to be maintained. And if there was a shortage, I had to make whatever happened to make sure that the line kept moving. And so it was really, so I did that. That was my first assignment. But anyway, I went through that, and I even participated in a launch of a new Mustang. And there's an entire process where they bring back the old people from the beginning to get the job one online. And I had the opportunity to work at that. Anyway, my career was going. And do you know, I would be so, I don't know, and nothing bad was happening. I was well paid. I had a new car. I wasn't even 30 years old. I mean, it was just, I was taught by the best. It was just, I would be the only woman most times, but it was never, and the only Black person in the office. But it was never, I never felt like, and they didn't go out of their way to accommodate me. But I'm saying all that to say that one day I was sitting there looking at the clock, and it might have been 2:00, and I said, I want to do something else. And it just came up. And then I driving out to the palace of North American Automotive Operations, Detroit was beginning to decline. And I just felt so sad. And I didn't feel like a savior or anything, but I just felt like there was something else I needed to do. And so I waited. I was there for, a few more, maybe 3 more years. And then I decided I was asked to help a nonprofit uh, develop paperwork so that they could fulfill a federal grant. There were things that needed to be in documents. I knew how to do that. So I did it, and I met people in the nonprofit arena, and I felt really comfortable. I was energized, and I just did it. It was like, and Ford, in fact, they were so good. I said, I talked to them about it, and they said, well, we'll give you 3 years to think about it. And yeah, 3 years. And if after 3 years you could come back, and after 3 years, you know, and I said, I don't, not that I was rich or anything. Money wasn't it with them. They just gave me time. And so I stayed, and I did affordable housing projects with banks. I've done racial justice projects with the Mott Foundation in the city of Flint. And now I'm doing literacy, and that is started in 1984. That's when I started working in the nonprofit arena, and it's really there's never a dull moment. The challenges are always raising money, supporting the mission, motivating, just the energy. But all of that has been such an enriching activity, because as I work, not just to help people or you're saving people, it's that you work together with people to make a difference. And we can all realize our dreams, whether if it's a house, if it's you want to read, or whatever it is that you want to address. There's a way for people to work together to make that happen. And when that occurs, there's, for me, it's energizing and it's enriching, and it really means a lot to me.
Wow, what a journey. I mean, and I'm glad I asked because I knew that there was something there. Wow, what a journey. And it feels like from listening more to you, Margaret, your entrepreneurial spirit has always been there, right? I mean, from piano to business, from business to being in places that you're uncomfortable and making it comfortable. I mean, that's kind of like, the whole mindset of just keep going, evolving. It just seems like it's amazing to hear, right? That you move from one thing to
Yeah,
looking back at least. And at the time
it
probably you thought crazy.
no, at the time, no, you're right. And even so, as I look back, it's almost like you look back and then you really see the journey. As you travel it, you have your goals and objectives, and you know what's going on, but it's part of a big picture. And when you reflect, and even if you think you do, you really don't, you can see how things progress and how you were reacting at the time. And
Yeah, wow.
so, yeah, yeah,
Well,
it
I
was
want to dig
really
a little
good.
bit deeper because I feel like there's just, I mean, clearly we could spend days, and I want to be respectful of your time because I'm interested, but I know you're like, I gotta work sometime here. So I
No.
want to ask a few more questions on that. So when you did those kinds of steps and you kept going, I am
Uh-huh.
sure there were like moments where you felt like this is awesome, it's working out, and it's happening. And I'm sure there were some moments you're like, oh no, what did I just do? And about to lose anything and everything and things of that nature. And I don't know truly what went through your
Yeah.
mind. But I'd love to hear maybe one of those moments where you felt like you're grinding and you're not going anywhere, or one of those moments where you felt you're grinding and you're going somewhere and it's maybe even faster than you thought. So maybe those two moments that you could help us. The whole idea about startup grind, obviously there's some kind of grind. So the question is, whether it's good grind or bad grind. I'd love to have for you to share one of each.
Oh, okay. Well, of course, there are times when Well, I guess for me it was somewhat different, Ferris, because um, I spent 25 years uh, very ill from the age of 5 to the age of 30, where I was at the doctor's office once a week, uh, never missing the time. I had severe asthma and allergies, and I was bedridden a lot of that time. And really wasn't able to go to school every day until I was in high school. And so being ill and being at death's door so many times, being revived with adrenaline hundreds of times, you at an early age when you, and I'll say this to say that those memories didn't return to me until maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, because I've been totally well. My children never knew I was sick. But I'm saying all this to say that when you are at a point of near death, then there are other things that happen to you that make many things that upset other people just trivial. And that happened to me at 5 years old. So I grew up always knowing more about life than even the adults around me, because the experiences I was having was just different. And one of the conversations that would happen as a child after I was revived, because they would come in and depending on your state, you know, sometimes you'd be on the floor when they were giving you this adrenaline, because they couldn't get you back to the room fast enough. And they take the parents away, and so they could treat you. And then the doctor would come in and say, you know, they talk to you and do what they do. And the people that treated you at this point were the really spiritual people that were there that brought you back. And the doctor would come in and say, well, what do you want to do? And I'd say, I have to go home. And the doctor would, and I'd always say, well, you know, my parents, they can't take. I knew they couldn't take it. They had to leave me at the hospital. So I would sit there and I'd perk up, they'd come in and I'd perk up and sit on the side of the bed. And I'm saying all that to say that when you were doing that and you're not even 6 years old, you know, all the rest of the stuff that plays out in life, you know, I would, you know, I'd know how to respond to other people. So it wouldn't be like, oh, I know more, I know better. I would even bring it up. I'd listen and sympathize and behave in a way I was supposed to behave. But in my mind, I knew that there were other things at work that if you were, you know, if you were moving in a direction and you felt comfortable, you could even make a mistake and recover. You know, things aren't always as predicted. And when they don't work out, there's a lesson to be learned. So even if it's painful, you take the pain and figure out what you can do. And there's always a solution somewhere. And that's what I found. And you just go for it and don't spend time doubting. But if it's not working, know when to step back, admit it didn't work. You had the best intentions. There's nothing wrong with failure. There's another opportunity. You have to keep going. You have to be optimistic. You have to believe in yourself. You have to have faith.
Well, I mean, such a maturity at a young age, I guess it makes it harder for you to stop if you had a speed bump or lost a client or lost a sale or lost a grant or lost a person from being, you know, it seems like you just gain so much, maturity at a young age that
Yeah.
it's hard for anything to really phase you in a way, right? I mean, if you had to every week face death, that's a scary thing. I mean, that's not, most people just see it once or twice in their lifetime, and that, scares them really bad. I can't imagine seeing it every week. You know,
I was too young to even get it.
understand,
I
sure.
forgot it.
Yeah.
I forgot it. It didn't come to my mind until, and I credit the people, the healthcare professionals.
Mm,
I
mm,
was not traumatized by
mm.
this. So when you say fear, I wasn't even afraid. I didn't know enough to be afraid. It was just the way it was.
Wow. So we could maybe jump to the moments where maybe as you grinding in good times,
Hmm.
when did you feel like, you're touching, maybe the sky, or you're touching like you're feeling like you're getting at least the fulfillment that you're hoping to get, or beginning to see it come to flourish.
Well, I think now, uh, time has passed. And so, in fact, I was driving on my way to work when I did community development on the east side of Detroit near Grosse Point. I would take the drive from downtown Detroit and take Kercheval to go east. And as I drive that now, in the past when I started in the 80s, it was just burned out houses, debris, vacant lots, just trashed all the way from Mount Elliott uh, to St. Jean near the new Chrysler plant, and it was just awful drive. Now it's businesses, we have entrepreneurs, Sister Pie. I mean, it's just a thriving thoroughfare. And so I drive around, not going back through some of my projects, but when I go through areas that were just trashed and I see what they are now, it just is just such to, not that I did it all because there were people working to make it happen, but the thing that, could we pause for a second, Ferris?
No problem. Yeah, go ahead.
Carol Ann? Okay, I'll come to the door, but I'm back. Here you go.
You're fine.
Okay,
We could just maybe go back to what you were
okay, all
saying,
right,
or
okay,
begin from the beginning, and then you
okay,
could just,
okay. You can just, yeah, okay, sorry.
you're fine. So, you were talking about seeing these awesome places, and
Yeah, seeing these places on the east side, and Victoria Park on the east side, Jefferson Chalmers, those are some of the early projects that I worked with. And in Flint, I did a social justice project there for 5 years, but there were so many entrenched issues in that city that even predated the water situation. Uh, I the project was very successful, but my vision of what I saw, it just was not gonna work. I didn't know it would end up. But anyway, saying all that to say that, and then with pro literacy, I have we've trained over 9,000 tutors and helped over 11,000 students. Uh, and now I see, you didn't ask me this, but a challenge is that we have immigrants, uh, we have large immigrant population that have changed this Metro Detroit in a wonderful way. And we have families continuing to move here in the hundreds of thousands, and many of them can benefit from learning to speak and improve those skills, English skills, so they citizenship and do the things that they can contribute to our cities. And so pro-literacy has an initiative with the uh, Immigration Rights Commission to provide tutors who meet with students on Zoom or on a smartphone and provide those individualized tutorial services. And pro-literacy's been asked to support students, young students between 16 and 21, so that they can be successful in school, give them that English tutoring tutorial session to help them be successful in schools. And that's a new initiative. And so what we do is we give free training to volunteers who want to participate in that program. And they go through online training and receive a certificate that enables them to tutor anywhere in the United States as an English as a second language tutor. And so we are recruiting volunteers for that program. And we think that, and we hope that we can attract enough volunteers to make a difference. So that's something that has happened, and it's something that we're excited about. And it's another way to make sure that everyone can fully participate in our society.
Well, first of all, I want to, as an immigrant, I'd like to say thank you so much for that because, reflecting back on my journey, definitely those kinds of things would have helped. Although I didn't have the chance to have that kind of thing, I did take a ESL at the university, and looking back, I remember just being part of many conversations, thinking that I knew what they were saying, and then I'll take some notes down and then go back and look them up, look those words up, and I'm like, oh, I don't think I understood anything. I'm now even more confused about what we talked about. So I need to go back and ask them the same question again, because I think I don't know what they said anymore.
I know, and so many words mean so many things,
Hmm.
and it's just, and that's the challenge that people who are born here have with the English language, the confusion of which word to use in a situation. And so that's a challenge. So anyone that is not born here that learns how to speak English, I have the utmost respect because it is just such a daunting language to unfold.
Yeah,
Many
well, you're very kind.
aspects.
Same feeling towards your work. One of the things my wife reminds me all the time that, I used to say it, but I'm now, to your point, tuning into Americans who say it, it just because it becomes so casual and so normal to accept it, which is one of them would be there is a solution, or there is, and I'm like, she's like, there are.
Mhm.
Type like that. So now I'm tuned into that. Anytime someone say there is four solutions for this, I'm like, but it's casual. People take it and no one pays attention, and it just
Oh,
makes it.
the people who that's what they do. You know, I'm one of those people.
I catch people on TV saying
Oh
it all day
no, but
long. I
but
don't
we
know what.
know, son, no, but we know not to correct people, and we only correct, written documents. But we don't correct people. No, no, because it's just easy to do. And my time when I was homebound for all those years, I read. And so I wasn't just there to sit, I was there reading. And so I would travel in my mind by researching different things, and that would keep me busy. And so I had time to to remember what bear to use, or what things that are trivial to people. I had time to study, but anyway, I
Yeah.
that part of it is you know you just have to be a nerd like that.
Yeah. Well, what a journey, Margaret. I mean, you've gone from, from my perspective, you really represent a great way for other entrepreneurs to hopefully tuning in to understand that you don't have to know everything about the field to jump from one ship to another. And you shouldn't be scared as much because life, there's much to it than just a little challenge that you may face as you're starting a business or growing a business because facing life or death is much more relevant let's just say than losing a dollar here or gaining a dollar there because at the end it just comes and goes. So
Yeah.
that's so powerful message. I really feel like it's such an enlightening. Hopefully, for those who are tuning in, could learn from some of these amazing lessons. And of course, your passion for literacy is clear, because you jumped ship to make it work. And I'm assuming that had something to do with your childhood, the way you were brought up, and all those things probably just led a light in you to see how you are affecting individuals in a way that for you, because you just said it a few seconds ago, you just read all the time, that it just probably made you just light up when you saw another person able to have a conversation or read or any of those things, probably just lit your heart up really fast.
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah. Well, if you were to go back to Margaret, when she was 25-year-old or whenever, any age you want to pick, okay, and tell her something today, not necessarily that she would have listened, right? But because you're in a different
I
stage.
knew everything.
Well, also you're in a different stage. You've gained so much knowledge and so much, right? So it's hard to tell if anyone would have listened or even comprehended what you're going to say. But what would you tell maybe that, 5, 10, 20 years, 30 years, whatever point you want to take from your career and say, I would go back and say this. What would that be? I'm sure there are lots of them, but just pick one.
I would say that I would not have conformed in certain ways because there were certain expectations of women, and not to say that I'm a proud woman and mother, and, widow, but I there were things that women were not always expected to pursue, and even business was outside of
Mhm.
what women were pursuing in my lifetime. And
For
so I
sure.
would say uh, have more faith. We don't step back from certain challenges, uh, and don't don't conform. If something is in your heart, later I did it, but don't ever be something that you aren't, or be who I should say, be who you are, whatever
Love
that
it.
is, and believe in yourself. And always believe in yourself, and be who you are, and celebrate that, even if nobody else does.
Love it. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. One of the things I actually, we made stickers out of it. It's one of the blogs I wrote, which is never doubt, always question. So don't doubt
Oh, I
yourself.
love that.
Question,
Yes,
yeah. And you can
yes, I
question all
love
day
that.
long. Question why is this, why is that? Question all you want. But just don't doubt that you can or cannot do something or ability or yourself or
Yes,
behavior because you know you best and no one really else knows. No matter what the outside look like, you know why you did something, why you didn't do it. And that's all that
you
matters.
you are so right, because just in my life, when I was growing up, women didn't drive, and their husbands took them and picked them up everywhere. My mother didn't learn to drive until I started driver's training at 16. And she was she was a teacher. She was not gonna be in the house where I knew how to drive and she couldn't. But I was 16. So all the women, my aunt was the only woman in my life that drove. And one woman that I knew. So if you think about that, just driving, thinking about being a judge was just, so that's what I meant. So even there, you know what I'm saying? Even whatever the surroundings, circumstances, like you just said, just believe in yourself.
Well, you're doing it till now. I mean, thinking even of just Launch Detroit, how we work together. You started
Oh,
this out of really nothing, and now you're pushing it through to other communities everywhere. You're like,
I know.
you
I
keep
know.
pushing
And we
that
got,
envelope, right?
oh yeah, just pushing the envelope, but no, just doing Rotary, period. And we talked about that, but when I look back, Rotary gave me my first civic award when I graduated from high school. That was my first civic award from the Rotary Club of Detroit. And, as you know, later I joined, went on to be president. And in May, I received the Service Above Self Award from Rotary International. And that's the highest award. They only gave out 125 in the world. And they have like 1.4 million members. And I got an award.
Wow.
Service Above Self. And that might be my last award. But just think about it. And I didn't even think about that. I started with Rotary, and now here we are again. It's like a bookend. So that's what I meant about the journey. I didn't think about it until I was standing, receiving that award. And we have a female, the first female president of Rotary International is from my district. And
Wow.
she's a Canadian, Jennifer Jones. And she was there so I have a photo with her and getting that award. And I stood there and I said, wow, when I was 17, here I was. Here I am now.
Yes, and what a journey, Margaret. I mean, I can't wait to read the book or books that you'll be writing. I hope
Oh
that you
God.
make that a commitment. Because you read so much, you could easily write so much. That should be an easy task.
I'm gonna have to stop.
But it'll
I'm
be,
not you're prolific. No, I have to ratchet up my game in order to start a book.
no, I really could see how wonderful the read will take someone and the journey that you've taken, and really, because you just kept moving. I feel like you never really stopped to reflect, and I think if you take the time to stop to reflect, it sounds like you made some stops to reflect, but if you take the time to reflect even more, I think there will be some wonderful lessons learned in books to come that potentially could help a whole lot of other generation to keep going. And one of the things I learned in my journey that the books could stay a little longer than we can. So that's that's.
So true.
I
So
mean, I don't know
true.
how long, but at least they'll stay a little longer. At least one day longer than we can. So
Well, that's
having
a thought. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So at least
Yeah.
with one, and then once you do one, you can start thinking about the second. But I feel like you could make them mini stories. You could make them scientific. You could make them non-scientific. You could make them fiction. You could do whatever you want. I mean, I feel like there's just so much, Margaret, that you could really aspire so many other people. And I feel like once you get that kind of award of beyond self, I'm going to say it in a kind of like what someone would tell the president of the U.S. Well, that's the highest promotion you could get, right? After that, there are no more promotions. You just got to start again from scratch and work your way back up to whatever the next level is, because there's nothing else you could do. You got
Well,
it.
that's it. Okay. All right. All right. I would never think about that. I
Yeah.
mean, it wouldn't cross my mind. But now
You're very
you
humble,
put
and
it
I know
there.
that of you. That's why I'm asking these things.
You are really digging deep. I never talk about these things.
Yeah. Well, I want to say thank you so much, Margaret, for opening up. Thank you so much for making time, and thank you so much for a wonderful conversation and the ability for the listeners to learn from you and share your insights with them. And as you know, I'm already honored to be part of your journey and thankful for that as well.
Oh, you are so welcome, and thank you for the invitation. I just am a super fan of yours and all of the great things that you do around the world. And I'm just honored to be here. And I just want to
Yeah.
encourage you to continue to do the great work that you are doing that makes such a positive difference in so many lives there.
Yeah. Same to you. Thanks a million. For those who tuning in, this is Faris Alami with Margaret Williamson. This is the Startup Grind Detroit. Till next time, have a good day.